All right, so we're going to dive into this whole blue roof phenomenon thing that's been going around online after what happened in Lahaina. It all started with the footage from Eric West's YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the devastation there is just absolutely heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah. It's really tough to watch some of that footage.
Yeah, he walks through these neighborhoods and there's just nothing left but ash and twisted metal. But then you see it, this bizarre thing where in the middle of all that destruction, there are these blue things, just like totally untouched.
Yeah, it's almost like the fire just decided to swerve around anything blue,
Right.
It's really strange.
Totally. And I get that fire can be, unpredictable and all. But this seems like it goes way beyond just a few lucky breaks. You know what I mean?
I know you can.
There's so many accounts of this, so many pictures and videos showing the same thing. Blue items surviving while everything else around them is just gone.
It's wild.
It really is.
It's almost like the fire just decided to swerve around anything blue.
Yeah. It's like the fire had a mind of its own or something.
Right. And that's where things get really interesting, Because, if we look at the actual physics of color, blue itself doesn't have any special fire-resistant properties.
Yeah, that's true.
Color is just how we perceive the way an object reflects light. It's not some inherent quality of the material itself.
Okay, so if it's not about the color blue itself, then what could be going on here? I mean, are we really talking about just like some crazy coincidence on a massive scale, or is there something else happening that we just don't get yet?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? And it's a question that has a lot of people thinking, especially after those Joe Rogan Experience clips.
Oh, yeah, where they were talking about DDWs, right?
Directed energy weapons.
That's right, the DEW theory. It's hard to ignore that whole conversation, especially when you see those videos of lasers burning through things. And then you see these blue roofs seemingly unaffected by the fire. So is there a connection there? Is it possible that the blue pigment somehow disrupts the energy from a laser or something?
Right. I mean, it's definitely a thought-provoking idea. You've got to admire the creativity there for sure. But, even if we think about that theory for a second, it raises even more questions.
Like what?
Well, why would someone target Lahaina with a DEW in the first place? And if they did, why would they leave the blue roof standing?
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. It's almost like they were trying to send a message or something. Those crop circles that people get all worked up about?
Okay. Yeah, now that you mention it, it does feel a little bit like a giant fiery crop circle, doesn't it? Mm. And speaking of strange coincidences, what about President Biden and that right roof comment he made? Was he hinting at something more than just standard fire safety measures?
That's a really interesting point you bring up there. It does make you wonder if there's some kind of classified technology out there, like a specific type of roof that can actually withstand these intense fires.
Right, because if there is, why isn't it more widely available? Why are we still seeing so much devastation if there's a way to protect homes from these kinds of disasters,
Yeah, it's a tough one. It really makes you think. Yeah, it really does make you think, doesn't it? It's like we're looking at a puzzle with some pieces missing. We can see what happened, those blue roofs just standing there against all odds. But we don't really get why.
Totally. And it's not even just roofs either, right?
Yeah.
There are the umbrellas and clothing and even those blue tarps, the ones the Army Corps of Engineers uses for their Operation Blue Roof program. It's almost like the color blue itself has become this symbol of resilience in the face of all this destruction.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's a really interesting observation. And that Operation Blue Roof program is actually a good example of how we think about color. Those blue tarps are chosen because you can see them so easily, so it's easier for emergency responders to find the homes that need repair. But now, after the Lahaina fire, that same blue color has a whole new meaning.
Right. It's gone from being like a quick fix to a symbol of survival. And that just makes the whole thing even more mysterious, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It makes you wonder if there's something more to blue than we realize.
Like what?
Well, could there be something about the color blue itself? Something we don't understand yet about physics? Something that makes blue objects less likely to be destroyed by fire?
I mean, we know different materials react to heat in different ways, right? Some things burn more easily than others. Some melt at higher temperatures. So is it possible that the blue pigment itself is a factor?
That's a good question. It's definitely something that scientists would need to look into more. There's a whole area of science about how light and matter interact. It's possible that blue pigments at a molecular level react to the energy from fire differently than other colors.
Okay, so are we talking about like how heat is absorbed or reflected? Like maybe blue pigment absorbs less heat energy or reflects it way better than other colors or something?
Yeah, that's one possibility. Or maybe it changes the chemical reactions that happen when things burn, making it harder for the material to catch fire or burn.
Interesting. What about those lasers we were talking about earlier? Could
Yeah.
there be a connection there, like between how blue pigments react to fire and how they react to lasers?
That's a great question. Lasers are basically just beams of light that are super concentrated. And if it's true that blue pigments interact with light energy in a special way, then it makes sense that they might react differently to lasers too.
So it's like those blue roofs might actually have some kind of laser shield, almost like a force field protecting them from the heat.
It's a wild thought, isn't it? It really shows how much we still don't know about the world. There could be all sorts of hidden things going on that we haven't even thought of yet.
Okay, but let's say for a second that the blue pigment does have some special property, something that makes it resistant to fire and lasers. Why haven't we discovered this before? Why isn't this common knowledge?
That's a fair point. It's possible that this has always been happening, but we just haven't had the right tools or awareness to notice it. Or maybe the conditions in the Lahaina fire were just so unique, so intense, that they caused some kind of reaction in the blue pigments that we've never seen before.
So like those extreme conditions were like a catalyst. They revealed something hidden about color and energy that we're just starting to figure out.
Exactly. Sometimes it takes something huge and terrible like this to make us rethink what we thought we knew about the world.
Yeah, it's like the universe is sending us a message, like, hey, pay attention. There's more to reality than you think.
I like that. It reminds us that we should always be curious about the unknown, instead of just ignoring things that don't fit with what we already believe.
All right, so we've got this whole blue roof thing, this weird mix of color fire and maybe even lasers. What does it all mean? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think the first thing is to admit that we don't have all the answers yet. We need to look at this with open minds and consider every possibility, even the ones that seem crazy at first.
Like a paradigm shift, a whole new way of looking at the world.
Exactly. And, paradigm shifts can be scary. They can make us question everything we thought we knew. But they can also be really exciting. They can open up whole new ways of exploring and understanding things.
Like we're on the edge of some big scientific discovery. And this blue roof phenomenon is our guide, leading us into uncharted territory.
I like that analogy. It reminds us that learning is an adventure, full of twists and turns and unexpected discoveries, and always pushing the boundaries of what we think we know.
So for everyone listening who's fascinated by this whole blue roof thing, what's the most important thing to remember?
I'd say stay curious, keep an open mind, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Challenge the status quo, look for different perspective, and be willing to consider ideas that might seem strange or even controversial.
Like that old saying, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing.
Exactly. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we still don't know. And that's what makes the journey of discovery so exciting.
Yeah, it really is humbling to think about that something as basic as color could still have so many mysteries. And this whole thing we've been talking about with blue roofs and lasers, it really shows how important it is to be open-minded and question what we think we know. Absolutely, because sometimes the most unexpected things can lead to the biggest discoveries, right? Like imagine if someone had just ignored the whole blue roof thing and said it was just a coincidence. We might have missed out on learning something completely new about color and energy.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so important to be curious and think critically, especially when things happen that make us rethink how the world works. Who knows, maybe the answers to some of our biggest problems are hidden in those little things that don't make sense.
So for our listeners who are now looking at blue things and thinking, whoa, what's going on there? What would you say is the most important thing to take away from our deep dive into the blue roof phenomenon?
I think the most important thing is to remember that observation is powerful. Pay attention to the world around you, notice the little things, and don't be afraid to ask questions when something seems off. Because sometimes those little things that don't seem to fit, those can be the clues that lead us to really big discoveries.
That's a great point. It reminds us that science isn't just about textbooks and labs. It's about going out into the world, asking questions, and being okay with not knowing everything.
Exactly. And that sense of wonder, that willingness to embrace what we don't know, that's what pushes science forward and helps us learn more about the universe and our place in it.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive into the blue roof phenomena. We've explored the mysteries, the theories, and the scientific possibilities. And hopefully we've left you with more questions than answers.
Because in the end, learning is a journey, not a destination. And it's those questions that keep us moving forward, always searching, always exploring, always trying to understand the universe and our place in it.
To all our listeners, we say keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never lose that sense of wonder. Because who knows what other mysteries are out there? What other secrets are hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone with a curious mind and an open heart to come along and unravel them?
And until next time, keep diving deep.